Hey, I'm Garrett Hoffman, and this is my automated microgreens system. I recently did a video on it, which you can check out here or there, and I got a ton of really good feedback. Before we get too far into what I want my system to do in the end, let me show you what an existing setup for microgreens looks like. Something like this, which you can find online for very cheap. And it simply has a humidity dome, a simple sheet that you put your medium on, in my case cocoa coir, along with a little tray for a water basin that you would put your actual water in that the microgreens are going to drink up. This is a solid block of cocoa coir. Basically, you just put some water in it, it soaks it up, and it goes. Each one of these will probably do roughly 8 to 10 trays. Because of that, you end up having to store it. The cocoa coir is completely inert, so there is no nutritional value that the microgreens get from it. It only uses it to prevent it from going through the trays that have the holes in them and give the seeds a little bit of structure to grow up from. Typically, when doing microgreens in a tray like this, you'll do multiple of them and stack them, so that then the weight of the tray above it pushes down on the seeds, which will encourage the seeds to grow roots downward. For microgreens, you'll also need some kind of lighting source. This one's a little bit overkill for microgreens, but you do still need to find a way to actually mount the microgreens underneath of a shelf or something like that in order to grow them and light them consistently. For the microgreens, I usually end up getting about 20 to 30 grams, which I will measure out on a kitchen scale. Once you harvest it all, you have to clean out the tray. So there'll be the cocoa coir, the leftover roots, sometimes the seed shells and stuff like that that are all mixed in. It can be a bit of a pain to clean these out. You can pressure wash them out, spray them down really well with a hose, give them a good scrub. It's not too bad, but you do have to have a place to dispose of the cocoa coir. All right, so my constraints for the system are primarily around it has to be easy to clean, easy to harvest, and easy to reseed it. If it takes any more than 5 minutes, it's too long. It also needs to fit elegantly on a kitchen counter.
Fancy.
So that means it needs to be small enough that it won't take up the entire counter space, and it needs to look nice and be able to fit into most kitchens. Now, my target audience for this is pretty niche. These are not going to be cheap systems if I do get it all the way to production. The goal for this system is not to save money growing microgreens, but to have a constant supply of healthy microgreens that you can harvest at home. What that means is I'm not going to be targeting microgreen farmers. This should not be somebody that is trying to get 20, 30 plus of these systems in one go and then using them as a way to grow and sell microgreens. This is definitely targeted at a consumer level. In order to keep the system as simple as possible, it's not going to be monitoring pH or ECC or any of that. The IoT nature of it will simply be the automation of the water cycle, whether or not it has water or not, the lighting cycle, and an optional bonus would be reminders on when trays are ready to be harvested and any tips and tricks and stuff like that in like a mobile app. All right, I had one suggestion on airflow, which I've put some thought into this, and the biggest constraint I have right now is the design on how I would fit a fan in here. So my thought would be to put a small, probably 40 to 60 millimeter fan that would create a positive airflow into the water base, which would then force air up through the pods themselves, which would create that positive airflow pushing up through the roots. And I think that would minimize the chance of mold. I had a handful of suggestions around the lights. Because I want this system to be able to sit on a kitchen counter, it definitely needs some sort of artificial lighting. You won't be able to rely on just your sun. Even if I shrunk this down so it fits better on a windowsill, the sun's just not consistent enough to get the growth that we would want on a microgreens. But one suggestion I really liked was the idea of adjustable heights on these. And what I'd like to try doing, this doesn't have a lot of weight to it, it's pretty lightweight, is I'd like to try putting some magnets embedded within the stands here. So then you can, and then they'll be embedded in the base as well. So then you can kind of etch it down like 1-inch notches. So I don't know if that's gonna work well or not, but it's an experiment I'd like to give it a go. I had a lot of feedback on cleaning the plates. What I really liked with this iteration was the cupped holes. So this lets the seeds sit in nicely, kind of cups the seed without letting them kind of jumble around too much. But still allows the roots to come down through. And because of the cupped holes, it allows like a Brillo brush or Brillo pad to be able to come through and scrub it. And because of the cup, it gives a lot more area surface. So it's a lot easier to scrub it clean and get all the roots and everything else out of it. If I do aluminum plate versions of this, they're gonna be a lot stronger and they'll hold up, and they should be able to go through a dishwasher if we want to. That way, when you do a harvest, you can just take the, when you take the plate out, you can just replace the cover, and then the water is still gonna spray up, but it's gonna spray up into that top base. So that gives you the option to throw it in the dishwasher, still let the thing go, and then come back and now you've got a fresh plate. Now, one of my favorite ideas is a removable water basin. So right now, everything kind of falls back into the main container itself, where the water will then get sucked up and then spray up. But that's gonna make the entire thing pretty difficult to clean. So what I'd like to do is redesign this whole front section here that will make it so then I can have a removable tray that just pulls out from the front here. That'll require a few changes to the way that the water nozzles are held up. I'd like to do a top base just underneath of this that is holding the nozzles themselves. That way the water base will fit right up underneath and it can slide all the way in and out. The only tricky part with that is the water filter. Because that's gonna be in the base, it'll make it a little bit harder to pull the base in and out. So I've picked up this, and it's just a simple little detachable tubing. And so I'm hoping to connect that with this, so then it's easy to detach and pull it out and then reattach everything without having to like redo the barbs and the tubing and all that, because that's going to be too much of a pain. But if this is a nice simple button that you push and pull, that'll simplify things quite a bit. So this right now is just a 3D print with some steel mesh around it. The only reason I did that was because I wanted to keep this inner tubing as close down to the water as I can. There's only about 1.5 inches of water available within the base currently. So in order to make sure that I don't run out of water too quickly, I just want to keep it down as low as possible. So far, I haven't found an off-the-shelf solution that fits exactly what I want. For now though, the steel mesh filter seems to be holding up pretty well. I just need a better way to adhere it down. One recurring feedback that I got was for the electronics and the water pump. So right now, they are all stored in the same container right here. What I'd like to do is to create a division in here and then create a sort of a cup almost that sets in here. That way, even if somehow the water pump fails and it fills the whole thing up, it's only gonna fill up enough to then flow back into the water base. So it'll never actually hit the electronic. There were some suggestions on putting the electronics up with the lights, and it's a decent idea to put them on here, but I want to keep this as lightweight and minimal and potentially even be optional. If you already have your own lights, you might not want to even use that. That's a good boy. Yeah, that's a good boy. Do you want to be on the camera too? Yeah, you want to be on the camera? You want to say hi? Say hi, everybody. Yeah, you're not into it. Okay, that's a good. The only reason I want to do the cup for the electronics is mostly for the aesthetic of what I'm looking for. Now, I still haven't decided on what I want to make the base out of or even the inner container. I have enough design changes left to do on this that it's kind of approaching an analysis paralysis kind of thing. So I want to just go ahead and get the changes I want in first, get to that Mark II, and then figure out where to go from there. I also had a lot of suggestions on using a wire mesh instead of the 3D printed cutouts here. I've done some experiments with them. Unfortunately, they are a little bit flexible and bendable. If I were to create some kind of a rigid structure around them, it might help, but it doesn't create an even flat spot. Maybe you can even see here how much of this is wiggling and bending. To get that perfectly flat, especially when the top would go on it and try to squish it down, there's gonna be a lot of spots where it doesn't completely push down on it. What that tends to end up doing is causing the water to pool, and the seeds will kind of group together and form clusters. And then so there'll be dead spots and big clumps of stuff, and that's going to encourage mold growth and all that. So ideally, my goal would be to get something this 1/8 of an inch thick that is made of either aluminum or steel. I've also tried this food grade silicone mesh, which worked decently well. The holes were slightly too big, but it had the same issues of the steel mesh, as that it was a little bit too flexible and did the pooling issue again. I could potentially find something off the shelf for steel that has the holes already in them. However, it's pretty specific for the hole size. I printed a bunch of different variations of these from 1.2 to 1.8 millimeters in size, and the 1.4 millimeter holes were the perfect fit. 1.6 was too big, 1.2 was too small, and finding that exact dimension for holes is probably going to end up being a custom need. Plus, it doesn't do the cupped holes that I liked in these, so that gets a little bit trickier to do off the shelf. So again, thank you for all the feedback, and keep it coming. I am learning so much from all of it. I'll be starting on Mark 2 of this version of the prototype this week. If you're interested in keeping up in a more real-time sense, there's a Discord invite in the description below. Love to have you join and see what you think. So until next time.